here in court for a sentencing on the case of State of Ohio versus Tommy Ray Richter. The state is represented by Asheville County Prosecutor Nicholas Irochi. The defendant is in court represented by attorney Ariana Terragati. The defendant entered into a written plea agreement with the State of Ohio, wherein he entered pleas of guilty to the offense of murder in violation of section 2903.02A of the Ohio Revised Code, an unclassified felony, and to the offense of burglary in violation of Ohio Revised Code section 2911.12A2, a felony of the second degree. And the parties at that time stipulated to a sentence of 18 years to life, meaning that on the burglary charge, the defendant would be sentenced to life imprisonment with the understanding that he would not be eligible for parole for a minimum of 15 years. He would be sentenced to 3 years on the burglary charge that would be served consecutive or after the murder charge. Now, with respect to the plea agreement, that was your understanding, Mr. Irochi?
Your Honor, just to correct what you had just said, and I believe you had inadvertently indicated that he was sentenced to 15 years on a burglary charge.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just to clarify that.
No, it would be on the murder charge. It would be life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 15 years. And then after the murder charge is served, or sentence is served, he then serves the burglary charge, which there's a stipulated sentence of 3 years on the burglary charge. That's your understanding?
That's my understanding.
That's your understanding, Mr. Terragati? But that's the consecutive second sentence, and the 15-year to life sentence has to be served first under Ohio law. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You were not requesting any order of restitution, correct?
No, we were not.
Okay. And that was your understanding, Ms. Terragati?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is considered a stipulated sentence under 2953.08D. And I'm now required to ask, is there any reason why the sentence should not now be pronounced? Or is there anything that the defendant or his attorney would like to say in mitigation of the sentence, acknowledging that there is a stipulated sentence that I will be following? Ms. Terragati or Mr. Richter, anything you would like to say?
I would just like to apologize to the family, apologize to my wife Marie, put her through this, and apologize to you, of course. And it's a horrible thing. I just want to be forgiven. Say I'm sorry. Truthfully sorry.
Ms. Terragati, anything other than what we've covered? No?
May we approach?
Yeah.
Your Honor, just briefly, my client is 49 years old. He recognizes that what he did was a horrible crime. He makes no excuses for it. I would like the court to know that he was heavily using drugs at the time. This is completely out of character for him. I don't believe he has a prior criminal history of any kind. And again, he's one of the most remorseful clients I've ever had. And he's ready to serve his time. And again, I know he's very, very sorry for what he did. Absent his drug use, this would have never occurred.
Your Honor, none of this would have happened had it not been for the outstanding work of the Asheville County Sheriff's Department. They left no stone unturned. And because of forensic evidence, DNA evidence, it was discovered that Mr. Richter's DNA was found on items of evidentiary value at the crime scene. And ultimately, when Mr. Richter was found out, that is when he confessed and has been very remorseful about the circumstances and what took place on that awful day. But I would want to say, Your Honor, that This was a horrible crime. This woman suffered tremendously, and I do believe Mr. Richter recognizes that. The state could not prove aggravated murder. We understand that we could not prove prior calculation. We do believe that the plea and the stipulated sentence is entirely appropriate. We do have law enforcement's approval of this plea agreement and stipulated sentence. A couple family members of Mrs. Martinchuk is here. I'm not quite sure if they want to speak to the court about this, but I do want to offer, Your Honor, if the court's indulgence, their opportunity to do that.
And obviously the serious factors override the less serious factors. There is mandatory prison, and there is also a stipulated sentence under 295308. The court did look at the consecutive sentence statute and finds that the consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crimes and to punish the offender, and that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the offender's conduct. Now, and I'm addressing the murder first, and then I'm going to get into the burglary second, so that it's clear what it is we're doing, because our reading of the statute indicates that we have to do it this way. In the event, after 18 years, you would be granted parole by the parole board, and I have no control over them. You would have to be on parole for a minimum of 5 years before they could terminate your parole. But again, nobody in this room has any control over what they do, and we're talking at the earliest the year 2033. So I'm just making sure you understand that. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, sure.
There will be no fine, and there is no restitution ordered. And of course, the reason for ordering restitution is it actually adversely affects the victim's family. I'm now going to address the burglary charge. Under the stipulated sentence, I will be imposing a prison sentence of 3 years on the burglary charge, and that 3 years shall be served consecutively or after the life sentence on the murder charge, which is the way in which I interpreted it from talking with the people on the parole board. Ms. Terragati and Mr. Arrochi, did you want to say anything? I thought she made it clear we have to serve the murder charge first.
Right. You just said life instead of saying 15.
15 to life. Okay. So it's after the murder case, then it's 3 years after that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
So that gives you, with the 15 to life, with the 3 it's 18. You understand that? Perhaps my selection of words is not what Ms. Terragati wishes they would be. So. And feel free to jump in, I'm not offended. Again, there is no fine on the burglary charge, and there is no restitution. You are required, and I am required, to grant judgment against you for the court costs. You don't exactly know how you're going to pay those. I am also required to grant you jail credit for the time that you've spent in jail prior to today, and we went over those numbers in chambers, and I believe we are all in agreement that as of today, June 2nd, the jail credit is 200 days. Correct?
That's
that was
correct.
what you came up with, and Mr. Arrochi, that was what you agreed to?
Yes, Your Honor.
And after release from prison, if you were to be released, you will have on the burglary charge only up to 3 years of post-release control. However, on the murder charge, if they should decide to grant you parole, you have a minimum 5 years of supervision by the parole board before they can decide to terminate your parole. So you may actually have 2 different types of post-release supervision. 5 years on the murder, 3 years on the burglary. And again, that's through them, that's not through this court. Do you understand?
Yes,
After you are released from prison, and this would be again on the burglary charge, you will have a period of post-release control for 3 years following your release from prison. If you violate a post-release control sanction that's imposed upon you, any one or more of the following may result. The parole board may impose a more restrictive post-release control sanction upon you, and the parole board may increase the duration of the post-release control subject to a specified maximum, and the more restrictive sanction that the parole board may impose may consist of a prison term, provided that the prison term cannot exceed 9 months, and the maximum cumulative prison term so imposed for all violations during the period of post-release control cannot exceed 1/2 of the stated prison term originally imposed upon you. And if the violation of the sanction is a felony, you may be prosecuted for the felony, and in addition to any sentence it imposes on you for the new felony, the court may impose a prison term subject to a specified maximum for the violation. And then you would sign this today in court, acknowledging that I read this to you, and your lawyer will sign it. And again, I emphasize that this notice applies to the burglary charge, not the murder charge. Thank you. The court has received the signed notice by the defendant and his lawyer. Again, that applies to the burglary charge. I'm going to go over a couple more things, Mr. Richter, and then we'll be done here today. Again, this applies to the burglary charge. I'm going to read you this notice. You are notified that you may be eligible to earn days of credit to reduce the prison sentence for each completed month of productive participation in educational or employment programs as specified in Ohio Revised Code Section 2967.193. Those credits are not awarded automatically and must be earned, and the sentence may be reduced by up to 8% for the credits earned. And I went over that with you on May 18th, but I'm just reviewing it here today. Do you understand that, sir?
yes,
I am required to advise you that you have a right to appeal this court's conviction and sentence. You have 30 days from today's date to file your appeal with the 11th District Court of Appeals. You have a right to a free court-appointed lawyer to represent you in the Court of Appeals, and you have a right to a free transcript of all of the court proceedings that could be prepared to you at no cost to you. Do you understand all of those rights, sir?
yes, Your Honor.
Okay, is there anything further on behalf of the defendant?
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything further on behalf of the state?
Maybe we'll briefly approach, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay, anything further on behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Roach?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thank you, and Sheriff, you can transport him back. Thank you.